Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sights and Sounds. I'm your host, Wesley Van Leuven, and today I'm joined by
Jhudge Williams.
Thank you for being here, Jhudge.
Glad to be here.
All right, and now, on today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the movie Mercy, starring Chris Pratt. And as you know, Chris Pratt has starred in many different types of movies. It's like Jurassic World,
Guardians of the Galaxy,
or Passengers, all three of which are great movies. And he's gone on to do all kinds of different projects because he's that good of an actor. Now, what's your thoughts as a person on his acting?
Well, he's been a huge part of my childhood growing up. He's been in so many movies.
Yeah, that's true. He's been acting for years now. He was also part of my childhood growing up. He's personally one of my favorite actors, actually. Now, as he's acting in this movie, it's just like any other movie. He's really funny. He's a funny guy, but he's also good at acting serious. In this movie, Mercy, it's a very serious type of movie because, as it says in the trailer, he only has 90 minutes in order to prove his innocence because he was being accused of killing his wife. His guilty rate was through the roof. And he, in order to be released and proved innocent, or at least not be executed, he needs to drop below a certain percentage of guilty that the system, that is AI, assumes he is.
So, guilty rate. So there was a bunch of evidence against him, or
That's the thing.
Did the system just say he was guilty?
So there was a bunch of evidence that was shown that was proven why he's a suspect. And so he's given that 90 minutes in order to prove his innocence. He's given access to databases, everyone's phones, footage, all kinds of things in order to try and prove his innocence. And so when he's going through this in the beginning, it's shown how he went to go see his wife, and there was some screaming and yelling, and then he left. And then not even that long later, his wife was found by his daughter dead on the floor in the kitchen. So he was the last known person with her. So that was meaning he is seen as the most likely suspect. But I don't want to get into too much detail and all. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a recap and a little bit of a little hints towards what the movie's like. So yes, there was evidence stacked against him. That's why he was put into the chair.
The chair,
yes,
as in court.
Yes, it's just exactly. It's an AI system court. He's put into a chair and he's restrained, and he's given access, as I said, to the system. But he's able to use voice commands and he's able to type with his fingers.
Oh, so that's what that was.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. And he's alone, and the only person in the room isn't a person at all. It's an AI that acts as both judge, jury, and executioner.
Well, no wonder he was found guilty automatically.
Now, he wasn't found guilty. He was seen as guilty because that's what was assumed by not just the AI, but also by the police department, which, mind you, Chris Pratt's character is a detective, and he's put many people into that chair himself.
So could you say it's also a story of him seeing that the chair is not always correct?
That's a great point. So in this movie, Chris Raven, which is Chris Pratt's character, is in that chair, and throughout the movie, he's finding out that the AI system is a lot more stacked against the prisoner in the beginning than he realized. In the movie, there's actually a line that he says, which goes along the lines of, "You have already made your decision as soon as I was sitting here in this chair." Basically alluding towards the fact that rather than being a fair trial, it was more like just them panicking and trying to give them scare tactics before they eventually are executed. Which is crazy to think about, but it also alludes to the fact that AI isn't always effective, isn't always right. There are flaws, and just like humans have flaws, apparently so does the computer system. And so he's finding out that there are some wrong assumptions.
So how did the world see him as a detective being sat in the chair? Like, how did that affect the world?
Now, that's a good question. So, Chris Raven is one of the top detectives. And as I had said earlier, he had put many other criminals in that chair himself. And he had fully supported the Mercy program, for it scared other criminals so much that the crime rates had dropped dramatically. However, the fact that he was seen as, quote unquote, murdering his wife, and he was suspected to have murdered her, and he himself was put in that chair, the world was in chaos. It was distraught because it's almost ironic. The guy who puts people in the chair himself is now put in the chair. The whole thing was irony. And there were some detectives and other police officers that actually thought themselves how if a detective who is part of the law has to be executed by the system in order to prove that no one is safe, not even the law is safe from crime, then they were fully prepared to let Chris Raven be sacrificed to the system.
So they thought that this law was absolute.
Exactly. Because the law is technically absolute. However, there are people who supported the mercy system, but I feel a little too much. Now, throughout the movie, as I said, he's going through all this evidence, such as like camera footage of his house, camera footage of his workplace, which he went to but never left, and got out of his car and then went back to his house. Then there's an argument heard, and then you see him leaving. And about like 30 minutes later, their daughter comes home from school, and their daughter is the one that finds the mom's body, as I had said. And unfortunately, since Chris Raven was the last one seen, that's why he is seen as suspect to this crime. Now, that brings me into the fact of Chris Raven's daughter, how distraught she was, thinking that she was about to lose both her parents, her mother to who was murdered, and then possibly just about to be her father, who was about to be murdered by the very system he supported. And so that was a very heavy time for their daughter. And so she had to go live with Chris Raven's wife's parents. And they did not support Chris Raven because they were fully convinced that Chris had murdered his wife or their daughter. And so they were trying to take and, quote unquote, protect Chris's daughter. But as we see, because he gets his phone call and such, he's trying to talk to his daughter, and she is in tears. And in the beginning, she doesn't want to believe that Chris murdered her mom and his wife. But throughout the next few calls he makes, her faith is starting to waver, especially with the influence of Nicole Raven's parents. So it goes into family ties and how you want to believe in your own family. Sometimes it's your own family that drives you away from what you believe yourself. They are trying to influence her.
So while I assume he did prove his innocence by the end of the movie, did the movie go over the actual success rate of doing so?
Yes. So the way it's described for a mercy trial is you have to have over a 92% rate of being guilty. And the AI determined that Chris Raven's percentage of guiltiness in the very beginning was 97.5%. So that was his starting guilty percentage. So that means he had to get below a 92% threshold of guiltiness in order to get out of the mercy trial and not be executed. So to answer your question more thoroughly, it's 92% or higher in order to be executed, but you must get below that 92% threshold in order to get out of the mercy trial.
How many before him were able to prove their innocence?
None. No one gets out of the mercy trial. That once you're sat in that chair, it's over. I mean, think about it. If you're only given 90 minutes to prove whether you're innocent or not, Whether you actually are innocent or guilty, if you're in that chair, you're going to be stressing out. You're going to be worried. Your adrenaline's going to be through the roof. And you can't think straight. So whether you're guilty or innocent, it's going to be hard no matter what. And so this whole movie is Chris Raven trying to overcome that fear and that anxiety while also trying to prove his innocence, but knowing that the world thinks he killed his wife.
I'm kind of thinking to the background of the movie now.
Mhm.
And would you say this is more of a utopia from all the people and how they trust this AI system, or a dystopia because of like how this AI system deems anybody who has a semblance of being guilty or a high semblance of being guilty is guilty, and there's no way to prove it up until this one person did so?
That's a good question. But let me let you know this first. In the movie, not every criminal is given a mercy trial. Only the criminals who are seen as highly guilty and guilty of high like crimes such as murder or like all kinds of other felonies are given the mercy trial if they're seen as highly enough guilty enough. Because that way they can be executed within that 90 minutes. And there's a saying that Nicole Raven's parents, specifically her grandfather, says, if you're in that chair, you deserve to be there. And when Chris Raven hears that, that breaks him a little bit. Because he knows he's innocent, but he doesn't know how to prove it yet. And so, again, he's sitting there trying to figure out how to do this while also stressing about everything that's going around him. But I would say it starts out as what is seen as a utopia. Because this mercy system, as I had mentioned beforehand, dropped the crime rates significantly because every criminal was afraid of being put onto a mercy trial. Because they knew that if they put on a mercy trial, then they're not going to get out, basically. But I think that throughout the movie, it's seen as more of a dystopia because of the fact that there are still crimes going to still happen. And no matter what, AI still makes mistakes, as evident the fact that Chris Raven was in that chair. Now, as you said, yes, he does prove his innocence. Everyone knows that. That's just a classic plot of every movie, basically like this.
Of course.
But the fact that he was there in the first place was a mistake in itself. And the world was just in more chaos than what was seen as peace. So that's why I'd say it starts as a utopia, or is what's seen as a utopia, but is transformed into more of a dystopia. And people start to question whether or not the mercy system is actually something that should be continued to be used. All right, so would you suggest to everyone here that they should watch the Mercy movie?
Yeah, I actually think I'm going home and watching it tonight.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan because the Mercy movie, I was lucky enough to go to watch it with my girlfriend. And it was a great movie. Just to sit there watching the movie, the thrill of it, and the action, it was amazing. So I definitely suggest it, highly suggest it to all of you to go watch it. With all that, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today on another episode of Sights and Sounds. I've been your host, Wesley Van Leuven, and I've been joined by
Jhudge Williams.
And we'd like to thank you on behalf of the Student Spin podcast. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.